Hey everybody, and welcome to the PC Gamer Show. My name is Tom Marks, assistant editor here at PC Gamer, with Tyler Wilde.
Hello.
And Evan Lottie.
Hey, Tom.
How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Good. Well, we got a good show today, as usual, if I may add. We're going to be talking about our new PC Gamer Pro channel, which is our competitive gaming channel that we launched today, in fact. We're going to be talking about the ever-controversial FOV discussion in FPSs. Don't hate us, and actually listen to what we have to say, and maybe we'll have a great discussion about it. We have our weekly Catfantastic quiz. This week is going to be a name-guessing game, which I'm actually kind of excited about. I'll let you know later, but
I'm in it to win it, Tom.
I think one of you plays one of the games, and the other one plays the other, so it'll be a good competition.
May the best man win.
There you go. And then finally, next we're going to be talking about Fallout 4, which we haven't actually discussed really on the show yet, besides in passing.
Yeah, true.
And they announced their season pass details, or that there was going to be a season pass, which is kind of a big announcement. And then finally, we're going to talk about a piece that ran on the site about short games on Steam and how they were affected by the refund policy that was enacted, which, if you don't know, lets you refund a game within 2 hours of starting it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, finishing things off with our regular Twitch chat Q&A for those watching live.
It's a hell of a show, Tom.
It is.
Good work.
But to start off, what have you guys been playing lately? Evan, what have you been playing?
I've been playing plenty of Counter-Strike Go, to get ready for the launch of our pro channel, headed up by Chris Thurston, who we're going to have on the show shortly, actually calling in from the UK. We're excited to have him on.
Yeah.
Our Dota 2 expert and one of our most passionate people about esports in general within PC Gamer. But yeah, I've been playing a lot of CSGO. I finally hit DMG, which is a rank within CSGO. I'm not sure how to put it. It's like 5 steps below the highest, and I think there's like 16 ranks or something,
wow.
18 maybe.
Yeesh.
But it's the only time that I've never hit that rank before. And I just played 2 games and I like stumbled into it. I'm like, oh wow, I'm DMG now. But the correlation to that is I've only been using this 144 hertz monitor, which we've talked about in a few episodes of the show, for a short while as well. I can definitely say that that's helped. I can say conclusively.
Wow.
Not just anecdotally, like if I can look back upon my performance in games in the past, and it shows your history and your kill death ratio and stuff like that, and I'm definitely performing at a better level, which is great. I took kind of a break off from Counter-Strike for a while to play some other stuff, but yeah, that's been really fun.
So is 144 hertz monitors, is that going to be the new steroids allegations within Counter-Strike?
Every pro player uses one. It's just standard equipment at this point. It'll be interesting to see if overclocking your monitor beyond that becomes a thing, up to 200 or something like that, or 150 hertz.
Yeah, we spoke about the 200 hertz monitors that can be overclocked to 200 hertz on last week's show, actually. So
yeah.
There you go.
I've been playing a little bit of Metal Gear Solid 5 as well. I'm about only 12 or 13 hours in, and yeah, really enjoying it. I think something we were talking about yesterday in a meeting was the open world itself is kind of barren. There's not a lot to do in there. That disappoints me a little bit. But, it's strange, but it evokes some of the same feelings I have playing Arma, of just having a base and sort of dissecting it at my own pace with whatever resources I want, and in sort of in the fashion that makes sense to me. And that's a great feeling. I think the people that have really responded really well to Metal Gear Solid 5 and sort of see it as a novel experience to them should definitely take a look at Arma, because you can kind of do some similar stuff in a cooperative, fully sandbox context that's much higher levels of fidelity in terms of...
I never made that connection at all with Arma. How do you feel about Mother Base 7? I don't know...
Momfort.
I don't know... I'm not very far, so I don't know how much bigger it gets, but I've been playing too. I think we all have 100% of the team has been playing. Yeah, but I wandered around it, and I was kind of disappointed that I couldn't go into anything, but I guess I understand that there will be some sort of little side stuff there. It's so hard to tiptoe around spoilers with this game, but I just hope it becomes something more.
Yeah, I've been feeling the same way. I'm really disappointed with that space so far. Again, I'm only 12, 13 hours in, but I love the notion of a metagame within Metal Gear Solid. I think it makes a ton of sense. I'm basically playing the game like a Pokemon game right now, where I'm just scouting for dudes to send back to my base, and the feeling of accumulation and growth, right?
Okay, so
You're building a stable.
calling it a Pokemon game is a really nice way of saying you're kidnapping humans, right?
I mean, you're
conscripting them into your army.
That used to be enemies. I mean, that's the trope, right? And you're using something spherical to do so, like a Pokeball. But yeah, Mother Base is really barren. It's strange. I mean, it seems like the only reason you're there is to encounter some story stuff, some cutscenes, but also just to occasionally visit different segments of your base so you can bump into dudes to give them morale, which is a really dumb, stupid system.
My problem with the morale system is actually that it doesn't give you any indication of what your base's morale is. You just hear that it is increased when people salute you.
You see it specifically per soldier in the menu.
Right, but like it's I still wish I had like some indication that was like, oh, you should go back to your base because your morale is low, like generally.
I'm kind of annoyed that you haven't like slammed me into the ground recently, Evan. My morale's a bit low.
How you doing,
as an employee? You need to throw me off the railings.
And then you just
something.
salute me even if I punch you and like shoot you. No big deal.
So I guess I've been playing what's on my shirt, Rising Thunder.
Oh yeah.
Because I entered a tournament last week. It was the first tournament, and it was a double elimination tournament, Tom. And I lost in 2 matches. But I kind of knew that going in. I hadn't played in a few weeks. Excuses.
Some of like the best fighting game players in the world were there. Is that right?
Yeah, the guy
or at
who
least
won
one
was Ryan Ramirez, a.k.a. the Filipino champ, who is an excellent fighting game player. He actually, I thought it was funny when they announced the tournament, he tweeted, "Thanks for the paycheck," and then went and won it, which of course he did. He's like it feels like an anime villain who's just like from the mean dojo.
Yes.
And he's just like, I'm gonna take this, and then there's like the little, but I didn't even get close to being able to play him, but it was really fun.
So you're working on an article about this right now,
Yeah.
but tell us briefly what that atmosphere was like, what surprised you. This was kind of your first time being in
It was my first time entering
participating
a competitive gaming event at all, and I got a T-shirt for participation, which is my participation award. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty casual, and it was a promotional tournament, of course, so it wasn't like, this is not an MLG tournament. It was just at this really cool space in SF called the Folsom Street Foundry, which they have a game night like 3 days a week, I think, and they host tournaments like this and show esports. So it was at a really cool place. There was no entry fee, Like I said, it was a casual sort of promotional tournament, but what surprised me is how I went in going, I'm going to lose. I'm just here to write an article about it. But I really wanted to win when I started playing, and I was like, I haven't competed in anything since probably I was a kid and I did sports. Like, I haven't entered into a, formal structured competition where it's like, I don't know. I was talking to Tim earlier about it because he wants to do a Hearthstone competition, and we talked about how in your adult life, you sort of try to avoid confrontation as much as possible, pretty much. You want everything to go smoothly, and you kind of forget how fun it can be to compete, even when you lose. It sucks to lose, but just the nerves and the, feeling a little shaky going over all the moves in your head before a match. Like, I haven't had that experience in a long, long time. So I would recommend if, there's even an informal, casually organized tournament near you, like for a game you like, I'd highly recommend it, even if it's just playing Hearthstone in a circle.
Yeah, competition gets into you. It really does. It's one of those things where it's one of the few things that will just get your adrenaline spiking, even if it's like you're just pressing buttons, but it gets into you. It really
I also
does.
drank like 8 Diet Cokes, so I was really. Yes, I lost, but everyone was super nice and friendly, and like they were all carrying their fight sticks and talking. I brought a keyboard.
That's
Hell
amazing.
yeah, you did.
So they're all standing outside, before they open up, carrying their fight sticks. They all have stickers on them. They got some scars and scratches from use, and I walk up with like a custom WASD keyboard, and I'm like, Cherry MX Red, guys. Check this out. But I like playing it on the keyboard. I've never been a fight stick person. I was never good with the fight stick. But
It's the same basic concept without a joystick.
Well, I was never good at any fighting games, so. regardless of input.
Well, this is the first one I've ever played that you can play with a keyboard, so that's interesting. Tom, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, I actually have lost steam a little bit with Metal Gear. It happens to me in open world games. I'm surprised it took 30 hours of gameplay for me to like start to be like, maybe I should not play this until midnight tonight. So that's impressive, and it's not that I don't like the game. It's just that like I wanted to play Terraria again because that game will always be under my skin. And then also I got my hands on, and this is the game I've really been excited about playing, is Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, which came out on Wednesday.
Yeah, you were streaming that last week.
Yeah, James and I streamed it on Friday, and I've played it at home a little bit as well, co-op, and it's just great. It's just really, really good. Like it's really incredibly hard, and if you're like not good friends with the person, you'll probably end up hating them.
So if you haven't heard of this game, it's basically an asteroid-style game with an enormous ship that has internal level geometry, basically.
Yeah.
That you platform between different modules in the ship, like a gun or a shield, and you can only operate one at a time. So if you're playing with two players, is it simply a two-player game?
Yeah, it's a two-player game or one player with a co-op, and you only get you get a little kitty cat that kind of goes around to different stations for you.
Okay. So you have to pick and choose like which station is most valuable. Like, would you rather move or be killing stuff?
Basically,
at a given moment?
And you never have enough resources, right? You always want to be moving and operating the shield and shooting two different guns, and you only have two people. And it's got this very bright neon style that's really refreshing. The levels are randomly generated. They have some like landmarks that you'll always see, right? But they are randomly generated, and you have to work together to like coordinate. Basically, there's just so much going on that you need to coordinate or else you'll just die. And it's only local co-op right now. And the devs who came, Asteroid Base, the devs came on our stream and actually said that they're not planning on doing online co-op, which I think is a fair thing because I can't imagine playing this game without the person next to me. Like, I just can't. But it's really, really hard, but it's also incredibly rewarding because you're constantly customizing your ship and you're customizing like what your different guns do. You get these little presents that you open up and they have these little modification gems in them. So it's a really fun and challenging game, and if you don't end up like never speaking to the person you're played with again, then you'll probably like grow from it, right? There's a lot of games like that. But yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Nice. Yeah, it looks very pleasant.
So speaking of esports in general, you know, Evan, you talked about CSGO, and Tyler, you talked about up-and-coming Rising Thunder. We just launched our brand new PC Gamer Pro channel, and to talk about that, we actually have Chris Thurston, who is the editor of PC Gamer Pro now, as his new title, joining us from the UK. Chris, how you doing?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hello.
I'm well. I've now calmed down after the panic of launching a channel 3 hours ago.
Not much time has passed.
The embers are cooling.
But
no, indeed.
So why don't, since you are the viceroy of this channel, right? Why don't you give us a rundown of what PC Gamer Pro, like kind of how it's different from the rest of our site?
I prefer the commissar of digital sport.
Yeah.
No. So PC Gamer Pro is kind of the final step on something we've been doing for a long time, because we've been covering competitive gaming for years in one form or another. Like the first major tournament I covered was in 2013. You know, we've been doing this on and off for a long time in lots of different ways, whether we're talking about guides or event coverage or interviews or giveaways or whatever. And Pro is an attempt to kind of bring that stuff together and give it a dedicated home, because I think one thing we haven't done, like very much, is say that we do this stuff, we do it all the time, and we want to give people a kind of single destination to come and find it. Beyond that, it's about applying the stuff that we already do, particularly in the magazines, in terms of how we cover games, to this new, well, I say new, he's supposed to be around for like a decade, and people keep calling them new, and they're not at all. But applying that sort of expertise about making things fun and accessible and interesting and only mildly incompetent, like most of the time, to something that can sometimes seem a bit hardcore for people. So yeah, like we do with regular games, trying to, use our, ability to put a new spin on things to introduce esports to people in a way that hopefully will bring more people to the hobby than currently find it for them.
Right, very cool. And so a couple of the things that for example, one of our first articles today as part of the PC Gamer Pro launch was this interview that Tim did with a Hearthstone pro named Amnesiac, who's 14. And he got rank 1 legend. I can pull up a picture for those of you watching on Twitch. He got rank 1 legend on NA last year. He hasn't ever spent a cent on the game. He's started playing when he was 12.
And I guess he's like in the top 15 in North America.
Yeah, he'll be competing for a chance to play at BlizzCon in the finals.
Right.
And it's a really, I highly recommend everybody to go read that interview, because it's like a really amazing. He's incredibly well spoken. It's really insightful in what he talks about.
Well, it's not to toot our own horn, but
Yeah.
with what Chris is saying, it's an example of what we're trying to do. We're covering competitive games and esports, but not simply like this team traded this player for that player or acquired this player. It's not about the sort of only the deepest, most specific inner workings of esports, but what's inclusive stories like this, that even if you don't play Hearthstone, how did this guy, without paying a cent on this game, get so good at it? Presumably, like without even having a background in Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, like a lot of pro Hearthstone players do.
Right. It'd be pretty impressive too if a 12-year-old was playing Magic the Gathering at a high level already there too. That'd be insane. Sorry, Chris, I sort of cut you off there.
No, that's cool. It's because I can't see your face because the Twitch is on a delay. So the way I would put it is like we've always written stories about what we do in games, like and typically the form that's taken has been hey, we went and did this thing in Armor, or we went and did this thing in DayZ, or whatever, and that's the story we told. And esports is basically that, and I think it's probably the easiest way to introduce it to people who are maybe skeptical about why would I watch a 14-year-old be better at this game than I'm ever going to be. And actually, it's just people getting something extraordinary out of their hobby that you can kind of tap into by kind of finding out their stories. So, Evan's absolutely right. That's one thing I was really happy with in that interview, is that it says a lot about him as well. Like he's unnaturally calm and confident for a 14-year-old. Like me, aged 14, would not be saying, yeah, I'm not afraid of anybody. I can play anyone. I don't even need to play today to maintain my number 1 rank. Like, that's extraordinary in and of itself, and something I've seen a lot in esports of every kind.
I'd say, yeah, that's exactly what we're interested in. I mean, we ourselves, we like, Chris Livingston is one of our best writers at this in sort of doing diary-style stories on sandbox games, or very malleable experiences where he just dives into something like City Skylines and sees what happens when you build a single house in a city, and what happens to that family that lives in that house. But I see it as just sort of a natural growth of PC gaming in general over the past 3 or 4 years. The explosion we've seen where, now that there's all this interest around it, there's naturally a greater number of people doing interesting things in PC games. So let's formalize that and write about that. That's part of the focus of the channel. So.
Well, and Chris, you brought up how it's been around for 10 years and it's not this new thing anymore, but it is, like Evan just brought up, it is what's growing, and it's what PC gaming is growing towards, right? Like, you were at the International this year, and you actually sent us a message on the very first PC Gamer show that we live streamed, which was great. A birthday video as well. But like, so are you? For you, how does this like? Are you excited to be like covering Dota in this form? Like, how you already do 3-Lane Highway every Thursday, right? Which is your piece about Dota and MOBAs in general.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I mean, I suppose this has been a weird journey for me, because like I started playing Dota in 2012 because we needed somebody who played Dota, because it's clearly this growing thing that occupies a huge part of what people are doing on Steam every day. It's vast and popular and everything else. It wasn't then, but we're in this position where we needed someone to cover it, and it's slowly grown and grown and grown until it's took over a portion of my career, and now my entire career. So that's so great. Good for Valve. But more generally, I'm really excited to be able to just present stories of people playing games without actually, and this doesn't speak ill of the rest of the site, but like without the need to kind of evaluate stuff. I've written a lot of reviews in my life, and I'm really looking forward to just being able to present, Dota and the stories that arise from Dota, and help with the stories that arise from other games as well, in a way that puts the players first and just talks about the experience of playing those games, without necessarily needing to be like also a consumer advisor. Personally, that's what I'm kind of getting out of it, I think.
And that's something that we've seen not just in Dota and League and that sort of thing, but like also in like Hearthstone. The very first Hearthstone expansion that came out, The Curse of Naxxramas, we did a review for. And then every expansion since then we haven't done a review for, but because it just doesn't feel like that's the right way to cover that, you know? Like it's this living thing now. It grows with the community. It doesn't grow just because there's an expansion that's out for it.
Yeah, I don't know how unique it is to this time right now in gaming, but more people are simply committing to 1 or 2 games as a hobby than ever, I think. And they're playing, Team Fortress 2, still in the top 10 on Steam any given day, any given moment. Been around for 8 years, 500 patches. A lot of other games imitating that style of committing to games as a service. It's old news at this point, but naturally our coverage needs to reflect that. Yeah.
It's funny, like, this is, I think, one of the best arguments and it's an argument I never want to have again, but with the discussion about, can games be sport? One aspect where they definitely start to fit that pattern is in this regard, because you talk about if someone's really into soccer or American football or baseball, they're not ever going to be like, oh man, baseball's kind of 7 out of 10. I don't like it anymore. I finished it. I'm done. Like, these things are lifetime hobbies, and games are starting to get there as well, where a game can be your lifetime hobby. Dota in its various incarnations is a lifetime hobby. And yeah, as you say, the idea that you would kind of write as if someone's going to pick it up for a month, finish it, and move on is I think something of the past when it comes to those games.
And it's no coincidence that those games have enormous skill ceilings in almost all cases. I guess I can't speak to what League of Legends skill ceiling is in particular these days, or Hearthstone, but certainly I think Dota 2, you'd probably agree, Chris, and Counter-Strike, just the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do in those games.
Something I've decided I'm never going to wade into in my new role is I'm never going to compare the skill ceilings between 2 games ever. I'm not going to talk about it. Not going to. People can believe what they want to believe, and I'm not going to judge.
So you really quickly, just jumping back, you mentioned that this idea that a game can be a lifetime hobby now. Do you I'd love to hear more. Do you think that that's true? Like, do you think that League of Legends is going to have the staying power to be around for to be as ubiquitous as football is one day?
Street Fighter has, arguably, and the games around it and related to it. There are lifetime devotees who still play Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, across its many editions, of course.
Yeah, and maybe they play 4 as well. But I feel like the fighting game community has shown that maybe, it's a bit different, but yeah, you can really dedicate a life to one series or one small cluster of games. And I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I think Evan and I are in the same position with this, with our respective games, where I would consider, if someone asks me what are you playing at the moment, like you guys did earlier, I will always say something that isn't Dota, because I'm always playing Dota. It's transcended into this ambient space now where I'm playing Metal Gear, but I play Dota every single day because it's just the thing that I'm practicing, the thing that I'm interested in, the thing that I'm following on one monitor when I'm working on a different one. And that is not, I'm not alone in that. That's true of millions of people, and that's what I mean by something becoming a hobby, right? That at that point it is a lifetime thing potentially in one form or another. Maybe it'll be Dota 3 or 4 or a different game that'll come along. But in terms of me following that combination of strategy and tactics and action and so on,
I think
that expertise that I've built up will carry with me and inform my enthusiasm for other things, as far as I know, until I die, I guess, and that's that.
Yeah. I think part of it is these types of games. I mean, if you look at Counter-Strike, obviously 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a very popular game, but they've added these new forms of extrinsic investment, of course, where you have item skins, you have a rank associated with you that is formalized, it sort of expresses your identity and your growth over time. And when you've invested, as I have, 900 hours, and I know, Chris, you're well beyond that in Dota 2.
Oh, God.
It's yeah, there are other MOBAs, yeah, there are other shooters I can transfer some of those skills, but it's not the same. It's I want to continue to build and sort of realize all the time and energy I put into this.
And one day,
abandoning that is scary.
One day you'll pass your gun skins down to your children.
I've actually wondered about that. I think my Dota library of items now is approximately the value of a bad car.
Oh my goodness!
If it was a bad car, then I could give it to a hypothetical child one day, but I can't. So that's a question I've got to just ask myself.
We're gonna have a story up tomorrow about the thousands of dollars worth of gun skins and knives in Counter-Strike, and it's just insane and absurd.
Hey, a bad car will break down. A gun skin is forever. Okay.
Yeah. My extremely rare wizard hats are forever, or until Valve tells me I can't have them anymore, at which point they're not forever anymore.
Well, I think it's really interesting. You know, I don't mean to compare esports to physical sports too much, because obviously they're very different entities.
Well, the real question, Tom, is when is Baseball 2 Ultra Hyper Deluxe Edition coming out? Turbo.
Well, and that's what I was going to bring up. Is it's very interesting to me that these physical sports have kind of made it their business to never change, and esports is almost the exact opposite.
Well, they do change. They get patched.
They
right,
change
but
rules
they get patched very slightly. You'll never see like an overhaul like Dota 2 just got.
It's a longer, slower change, but I mean, baseball has obviously changed a hell of a lot since in the past 100 years. But I guess esports are different in the sense that in order to play the esport, you buy the esport product, which has a set of rules dictated by the company that makes it, and they can put out patches and they can change the rules at will. But I don't really see that as having been or being a barrier to sort of any enjoyment of them.
No, and I definitely didn't mean it that way. It just is. It's just amazing to me that, you know, games, like Chris said, games are lasting so long when they are literally built around the idea of like insecurity and change. And Chris, I think you wrote a 3-Lane Highway about this, about how like big crazy patches are a good thing in Dota.
They are. I was just to continue the analogy, something that I hit on the other day actually when I was trying to figure out a better analogy for esports, you know, to understand exactly this about them. I think in terms of, rather than go to like traditional sports like, you know, baseball or football, go to motorsports, because motorsports have been around for generations, but they have changed substantially. They change with technology, and they change with rules that get brought in. I know I don't know American motorsports too well, but I know Formula One, which I don't know if you have a different name for it, and in Formula One, they'll bring in restrictions on how engines can be built in order to change the nature of the game, basically, between seasons. And that means that they've functionally patched it, basically. They've patched the engineers and told them what they can make. And it's actually, there's a whole bunch of analogies there, and everyone would kind of, you know, agree that motorsport's a sport, despite the fact that they almost have this versioning over time as everything changes. And so I think there is total precedent for it. It's just that games are a new form of it in so many different ways at once that maybe that recognition is struggling to be seen.
Well,
yet.
Whenever they do get recognized, I think it's going to be relatively soon. I mean, like the Day 9 actually said something great to me once when I was talking to him. Is he said like, esports are the mainstream. You know, everyone talks about when esports will become mainstream and when video games will become mainstream. And he was like, that's not the conversation you should be having. They are the mainstream already, and it's when those other people are going to catch up, right?
Yeah, I'm so sick of that conversation and that search for validation. It seems like it's been going on as long as I've been a PC gamer, as long as I've been following esports. And specifically the extent at which people look to ESPN to validate us. I mean, I think after the international, Chris, if you remember, or maybe it was a Heroes of Storm tournament that broadcasted on ESPN.
It was the Heroes of the Dorm collegiate tournament.
But there was an article of like, oh, look at this ESPN commenter, his tweets or something he said, being sarcastic about the esport that was broadcast on their own channel. Like, how ridiculous that they don't understand it, and we're all indignant about it in the gaming community. And like, what do we care? You know, like we built this thing. You know, it's enormous. Tons of people care about it. Tons of people are passionate about it. Like, let it be what it is. We don't need to. In this, I liken it to, in the late '90s and early 2000s, how we were looking to Hollywood to validate the artistic direction of games. It's like, oh, we're big adult creative things now, right? Aren't we? Film people, like, we can we can have voice actors and we can have cutscenes, and games are this really big interactive storytelling medium, right? Aren't we? Please, let's just let games be games. Let esports be esports. Don't try to make esports sports.
Yeah.
It's completely a generational thing as well. Like, I've been in a lot of arenas full of young people who don't ask these questions at all. And the oldest thing, like the ESPN thing's really interesting because you get the ESPN's audience, furious that what's being shown on their sports channel isn't sport, quote unquote. But that's no really any different to somebody being furious at music channel for showing something that quote unquote isn't music, which is pretty much the criticism that follows any new genre ever. Like, esports could be grunge or EDM in that regard completely, because it's the same thing. A lot of young people like something, a lot of older people don't know what to think about it and probably say it isn't real, and then it makes loads of money, and then it's normal. And I think we're part of this sort of like, waft through time that will be completely not worth talking about in 5 years, which is why I agree with Evan. It's probably not really worth, commissioning fast investigations into now.
I've got an older friend who, every time I put on hockey, he insists to me that the only real sports are the ones played on grass.
How arbitrary.
He'll watch baseball, he'll watch soccer, he'll watch football.
I think League of Legends has the brush, so technically, right?
that counts, yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, Dota takes place 50% in the jungle, so, what gives?
Yeah, what about sports that take place in trees?
He's
Dota?
a very folksy friend,
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thanks very much for joining us. We know it's late over there in the UK right now. And yeah, everybody keep an eye out for what he's going to do with more, and what we're all going to do with more for the PC Gamer Pro channel. If you're at all into...
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks. If you're at all into competitive video games, it's a place you'll want to watch. We'll talk to you hopefully soon.
Yeah, cheers, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the things that goes along with esports in general, because one of the most popular esports for a very long time before kind of PC esports has taken over as the most popular, if you will, is shooters like Halo, which is not on PC, but Halo and Call of Duties, which are on PC but not as competitively, have had these tournaments for a long time. And one of the things that is always brought up with any first-person shooter of any kind is FOV. And we ran an article, I believe it was yesterday morning.
It was on Monday, yeah.
Yeah, Monday morning, all about FOV. And the actual title, I think, kind of made some people mad, because the title of the article is FOV Isn't Everything, How Claustrophobia Creates Immersion. And if you're in Twitch chat, I just dropped the link in there. Now, for the record, right at the beginning of this conversation, when we start to talk about FOB, yes, FOB improperly used or improperly set can make people sick. Too high, it'll make you sick. Too low, it'll make you sick. That is fact. That is true. No one is contesting that, right? That being said, what the point of the article is that sometimes, even when you have a good FOV that doesn't make you sick, sometimes not having the freedom to increase that FOV is a intentional thing. It is for a purpose. It is to limit the amount of information you're taking in. In a similar way, the analogy that comes to my mind is there used to be a hack for League of Legends that would let you zoom the map out just a little farther than everybody else, and you'd just get more information.
Absolutely.
And it would corrupt. It would give you an advantage that other people didn't have.
Yeah. That's a good comparison.
Yeah. And so, Evan, you are our Counter-Strike guru. What FOV do you play at?
Oh, I guess I play between 100 and 110 at the very most.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it is a different kind of situation in multiplayer games where, just as you're saying, Tom, having more information is an advantage, right? I mean, you can talk about what FOV is most comfortable to you, what sort of looks right to you and feels right to you in terms of the proportions. And actually, Counter-Strike helpfully has some extra settings you can have where you can change the view model, not only its position, but its prominence, which is really nice. So that is independent of FOV, which I think is really, really, really cool. But, this article is basically talking about, that we published on Monday, let's maybe stop saying that FOV is sort of this it's on the gamer's Bill of Rights, and you must have a FOV slider if you're a first-person game, or else like there will be some grand revolt, and it's this great sin against humanity, and you've disrespected PC gaming. And like, a big part of me agrees and appreciates, like, oh, and here we have, as we're showing on the stream, what Skyrim looks like with 180-degree FOV, which is just kind of a joke, but an illustrative one. I like to think that FOV, like anything else, like graphics settings, like any other visual aspect of the game, can simply be used as a tool to convey an experience. And one of the examples we give in this article is there's a game called Space Beast Terror Fright. I think I've got that right. God, it's such a weird name.
You do have that right.
It's in early access right now. It's a really cool cooperative. It's almost like Space Hulk, the FPS. If you're familiar with that from the Games Workshop brand, you're Space Marines on a ship and you're attacked by basically alien-style aliens, and it feels very claustrophobic, partly because your FOV is locked to 90, so you're seeing 90 degrees field of view. But as sort of the tension ramps up in the game dynamically, that FOV dynamically fluctuates up to like about 150, I think. So your view is getting very distorted and kind of rounded when you're getting nervous and when shit's kind of hitting the fan. And if you could adjust your FOV up to 120 or something, or even downward down to 50 or something, the experience would be really asymmetrical and wouldn't, basically the developers wouldn't be able to sort of convey what they want. They wouldn't be able to achieve their creative goals in the same way. They'd have to find another way of doing that, and I can't think of one.
And once again, if they do this, if they make this game and it's making people sick, they've still made a mistake, right? Like they're gonna be doing this and making it still fun to play or playable in general. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of this, I guess, mod that came out a little while ago called Blinky, which used something called the Panini, I think it's called Panini projection, to make Quake actually viewable at high FOVs. So this is, on the left is just what Quake looks like at a standard 170 FOV, and on the right is with the Panini projection. And basically it takes this distorted image and makes it actually usable. And so you can do these things that, like limiting FOV, as long as you do them right. It's not a matter of if you don't give me a way to adjust the FOV, it's like ruining the experience. It's no, if you do it right, it's fine. It can be intentional. It's the same way. I think the other game that was brought up in the article was Elite Dangerous.
Yeah. And we're not saying, to be clear, we're not saying arbitrarily like Far Cry 4 should definitely not have an FOV slider, because Far Cry is definitely thematically a game about claustrophobia, and it's a sandbox game, and it has a beautiful open world, and you don't want the view model to be enormous and taking up a quarter of your screen, obviously. But in experiences like cockpit games, like Elite, or when you're in a vehicle, Arma is another game that we brought up, where when you're in a vehicle, you have this really narrow viewport. It's not technically the FOV, but it's sort of occluding and vignetting the corners of the screen. You have a very narrow way to look through, and that's deliberate, right? Because you don't want to be this omniscient figure. It's fun to feel vulnerable in a transport like that. So I think we're just trying to open up this conversation a little bit, because I think the discussion around FOV over the past year or so has been, I think what I said earlier, it is a right. We have to have fully customizable in all situations. And I think, well, hold on a sec. Let's think about, are there some experiences where having that taken away, that freedom taken away, can lead to something interesting? And I think there are. We've given some examples toward that, and we should encourage that to some extent. Yeah.
The criticism of your point of view, I'll be devil's advocate, I guess, which is a jerk thing to do, is that
how dare you?
It's sort of an unwinnable argument, because the argument against is, no, FOV is a technical aspect of a game, should always be adjustable, and doesn't actually create a claustrophobic sort of feeling. Or at least that's the argument that I heard sort of repeated over and over, which is, I guess, impossible to refute because it's a series of opinions.
Well,
I think it's
how
fair.
about this?
But so is our opinion.
I remember this sort of being talked about when different media types and like when HD TVs were kind of first becoming a thing. We were moving past 4:3 aspect ratio TVs. Some directors are really, really picky and deliberate about their aspect ratio. They feel like a certain aspect ratio, like Kubrick is one of them, conveys a certain mood, sort of tells the story in a certain way. It's a deliberate creative decision. But if you're a TV owner and you have a 60-inch plasma or whatever, you're like, well, man, this movie, it's like so narrow. I'm not even using the whole screen. I don't have the total freedom to like use my hardware or whatever. But why not just make yourself subject to the director's intentions and kind of, just be along for the ride along those lines?
Well,
right?
and I will say that I do agree with everybody who was bringing up the idea of like the idea that it's a technical option and not like a gameplay thing it does follow through when you compare it to something that another thing that people brought up, which is frames per second, where the argument that's saying like, oh, your game is capped at 24 frames per second because that's what like movies are capped at and it makes it more cinematic is like, that's silly. Like, no, right? Like you should be able to like if your game can run at 60, you should let us run it at 60. But I think and I totally agree with that, right? I just think it's a little different than FOV. Like the argument is a little different than FOV because the FOV can be used intentionally, like you were saying with cockpit games, right? Like you'll need to look around. Like that is a part of a cockpit game. Mm-hmm. And whereas frames per second is just absolutely a technical limitation. And like if you don't give people the option to increase that, then it's just silly. But I think that is a fair kind of criticism of it. I think that there is a genuine counterpoint in the idea that, FOV is just this thing, it's just another setting. But it's just one that, I don't know, like you said, in some games I disagree, and in other games I don't.
I just like sort of tapping into that the larger conversation, especially with regard to like PC ports with what are the minimum things that we expect as PC gamers? What are the options and settings we expect? Is FOV one of them universally? Certainly stuff like we want to be able to select our resolution,
right?
And VSync and stuff like that. But what's really on that list? I think it's interesting to sort of revisit that every once in a while, and this is just a way of doing that.
Yeah, well, my game, of course, will be locked to about 10 FPS as a design choice, and the aspect ratio is a small box in the center of the screen.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's a horror game.
The game I'm designing is actually a PowerPoint presentation,
okay,
and you get to choose the FPS as you go through it.
What's the FOV in PowerPoint?
It has a slider, actually.
There's a lot of cells.
I'm not a monster.
Okay, that's good.
Real quickly, out of curiosity, I usually play at around 90 because I'm a heathen. And every time I stream Team Fortress 2, everyone in my chat is constantly like, why aren't you like raising the FOV? And I'm like, I'm kind of fine with 90. But Tyler, what do you play Rats Instagib at? Or if you still play that?
I think it's about probably like 110. I think any more than that, the distortion, there's just too much information, and I can't, because especially when you're doing like a Instagib style game, you have to balance this need to see your peripheral vision, and the more you come out, the harder it is to aim accurately. Now everything is a little smaller.
At long range especially,
at long range, so I think at like 100, 110, I don't think I'd ever go over that. But I think I've also like taken it down to 90 as like experimentally and like had pretty good success. So.
And maybe in the future we'll only ever be playing games on Oculus Rift and Vives, and we won't ever have to choose our own FOV. It'll always be set.
It's infinite. Or just yeah.
Yeah, I play Rocket League at a pretty high FOV, but being third person, that's sort of a different experience.
So speaking of Rocket League, let's move on to our Catfantastic weekly quiz.
Boy.
So for those of you who don't know or just tuning in or anything like that, Catfantastic, which even I have trouble saying now, 2 months in, is our weekly quiz section of the show. where we do some sort of PC gaming related quiz. This week, it is a name game featuring mixing two games, which, if I may say, have pretty poorly named characters in them. So the first game is Rocket League, which maybe doesn't have poorly named characters, but arbitrarily named cars.
Oh, like the AI cars.
No. Excuse me. I mean the actual body types.
The chassis.
The chassis.
Okay.
The chassis names are completely, like, they kind of make sense, but they also are, like, really random in a lot of cases.
Okay.
And the other game, Tyler, you've played a lot of Rocket League. I guess you have too, Evan.
I've never
30-plus hours, yeah.
Yeah, and the second game, another poorly named character game, Dirty Bomb, which those of you who don't know, Dirty Bomb is the free-to-play shooter that all its characters are, like, really, really, like, make me cringe with their names. Like, the proximity mine person is named Proxy, and the artillery person is named Artie.
And the Healy one is named Healy.
Yeah, basically. Yes. Shooty McShooterson is the main character
That
of the
wasn't
game.
true.
No. So what I've done is I've collected a list of names from that are either a Rocket League chassis type or a character from Dirty Bomb. And you guys, and you at home can play along, will have to figure out which game it is from.
Okay.
Are there any that are both?
No, there are none that are both this time. I try to usually get ones that mix with both, but...
Because I was like, is Phantom one in both? I think... anyway.
Okay.
Proceed.
So...
Yes.
Is this a Dirty Bomb character or a car in Rocket League is the game we're playing today. And we can go a little quicker because we have a couple of them, and the more you think about them, the more you'll probably get it.
Great.
And Evan, if you know one for sure because you've played Dirty Bomb and Tyler hasn't, then just let him simmer for a bit. All right, so first up, Hot Shot.
That's I'm gonna say Rocket League.
I'll say Rocket League, yeah.
Okay, that is correct, but see, you got you for a moment there.
I hesitated, yes.
So, Phantom.
Oh man, could go both ways. I don't know.
Most of them
I
can.
want to say Dirty Bomb.
It's like, I think that's the car I've been using. Seriously? But maybe it's not. I mean, I actually think it's the sword guy in Dirty Bomb, who I've never used, but is sort of one of the recent additions after... He was right before Red Eye. That's right. I'm going to say Dirty Bomb.
That is correct. It is Dirty Bomb. And you are right, too. It was the invisible guy.
Cloaky, swordy guy.
Cloaky, swordy guy
Yes.
would have been too long, I think, in the brainstorming meeting.
True.
Merc.
That is a Rocket League car.
That was very assertive.
That is a Rocket League car.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm going to... Wait. Why am I questioning? There's some... I don't know why it makes me think it's a Dirty Bomb character, but for some reason, it triggers the Dirty Bomb center of my brain. I'm going to be wrong and say Dirty Bomb.
So that is Rocket League, and the amazing thing is characters in Dirty Bomb are called Mercs.
That's right.
So I wanted to give you the curveball there.
Oh,
I know Merc is like the big chassis.
It's
in
the
Rocket
van.
League. It's like the van.
Yeah.
For some reason.
It's also one of the more popular Rocket League
I
cars.
using it,
A-team.
That's why I knew it.
Paladin.
Oh, I don't think there's a Paladin chassis. I don't think there is. Paladin doesn't seem like a Rocket League word. You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
I'm going to go with Dirty Bomb.
I'm going to say Rocket League, though.
It is Rocket League, so that makes Evan one up, I think.
Damn it.
Or no, because you guessed Merc with Dirty
tricked
Bomb.
me.
So
I
there you go.
did.
So we're even still.
You
I did.
feigned confidence and then switched.
Yeah, Paladin could go either way. It's a weird one. Rhino.
Jeez, that's really close for me.
Are there cars with horns? I mean, all cars have horns.
Wrong
Yes.
type of horns, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tyler?
I'm going to say Dirty Bomb, I think, because
I agree with you.
I can't think of a car named Rhino, but at the same time, like that, I feel like that would have to be a really big car, and I feel like Merc is the big car, so I'm going to say
Sound
Dirty
logic.
Bomb.
Rhino, yes.
That is, he's the kind of heavy kind of guy in Dirty Bomb, so yeah.
He has a minigun.
Sparks.
I don't know, Evan. I think I might. Is it Dirty Bomb?
Is it like one of the light Rocket League cars? Spark plugs, you know?
It could be, but the way you're talking makes me think, oh, Evan knows what it is, and he's just trying
or
to
maybe
goad me into
it's a double bluff.
Sparks.
This is much harder than you'd think it is, right?
I think Evan's going to have to choose first.
All right, well, I'm going to say Dirty Bomb.
I'm going to say Dirty Bomb.
It's
That was Dirty
as
Bomb.
in defibrillation Sparks. like,
Actually, Sparks is the one with the defibrillator gun.
that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Takumi.
Jeez. What? How is that spelled?
Takumi.
Please use it in a sentence.
That's not a functional enough.
For example, I drove to Kumi, or
No, you're not pulling a fast one on me.
I'm going to say Rocket League.
I guess I'll say Rocket League because it doesn't literally say what.
There's
the
nothing
person
functional
does.
about it, yeah.
That is Rocket League.
It's-
But there are names, a couple. There's one name that's just called Kira in Dirty Bomb.
There's like Phil.
yeah,
You know.
Jeff. That's a Rocket League car. No,
The
so
Jeff.
that was Rocket League. Takumi was Rocket League. Phoenix.
Drive the Jeff.
I don't know. Like, what would Phoenix describe in Dirty Bomb? Someone uses fire.
You should also do a throwback to one of our old questions where is this also I almost said flavor, but scent of Axe body spray.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think Phoenix actually was on that list as well.
This is a hard
The things your brain chooses to store and not store, like I can remember only sparse elements of 1994, but I know practically all the Axe body spray flavors.
flavors. You are supposed to spray them
I
into
guess
your
because
mouth,
I've ate
right?
them all, apparently.
I
Phoenix
don't
is
know.
a Rocket League car.
Okay, I'll say Rocket League too.
Man, just group think there. That is a Dirty Bomb character.
No.
What?
A new one.
What?
Oh man.
Yeah.
I haven't played in like 2 weeks. They released another one?
Phoenix is a character, a medic that can revive himself.
And I was gonna go Dirty
Thus
Bomb,
the
but I
Phoenix, yeah.
trusted your
How does he
knowledge.
do that?
I don't know.
I guess I'll have to go play.
You know how they like when you're in Dirty Bomb, he kind of like motion to the person to get up. He just does that to himself, and he encourages himself. Encourages the bullets out of his body.
That's good.
Aura.
So what would that describe in? If that were a Dirty Bomb character, that would be like a character who, I don't know, is spiritually centered, I guess. Dirty Bomb, I guess.
It's Dirty Bomb.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of a gimme because that's one of the ones you start with.
Yeah.
And finally, Gizmo.
I know that one.
It's a Rocket League car.
Yeah.
One of the tinier ones.
There we
very-
go.
Very toy-like. Yeah.
So some of the ones that didn't make it on the list that I thought were a little too easy were Octane. I thought could probably go either way. Venom, another one I was hoping to
Oh.
get you with.
A Rocket League car.
Yeah. Dominus also, but I thought too many big things like Paladin and Merc and so.
Sure, yeah.
All right, but that is our Catfantastic for this week.
Yay.
I think you guys were about even that entire
Yeah.
time. I don't think it went
so,
one way or the
yeah.
other.
Maybe we need like cards that we reveal or something. It's like binary Rocket League or option 1, option 2.
I should have
that's
put
true.
both in. I should have just said there was a both option and see how many times you guys used it.
That would have been tricky.
How cruel, Tom.
I bet Phantom would have gone on there. But moving on, let's move on to our next topic this week, which is actually Fallout 4. Now, Fallout 4, if you guys don't know, is the sequel
heard of
to the popular game Fallout 3. No, so we haven't actually talked about. We've only talked about Fallout 4 on the show in passing, just if it came up in a Twitch chat Q&A question or something like that. Recently, I think just last week, they announced that there was going to be a season pass of DLC for Fallout 4, which I saw some positive and negative reactions to. I will agree with the opinion that people trying to sell you something before they tell you what it is a little frustrating. But in general, let's just take like a couple minutes to just get hyped about. Like, are you guys hyped about Fallout 4? Do you feel that? Are you gonna rush out and get it day one? Like, what's your take?
I mean, I respond most to the aesthetic of the game. I think it has amazing style, you know, in terms of when I think of Fallout, it's simply the junkyard presentation, the weird sort of nuclear haze of lighting in some of the environments, the monster-like enemies, and that music. that music above all, and sci-fi weaponry, and tons of like sarcasm and dark humor layered in. I think all that rolled together is very, very unique. Where you look at something like Skyrim, and while there may be moments of humor, it doesn't sort of straddle that. It almost has, what we were talking about with Metal Gear Solid in previous episodes, where it's deadly serious one moment and total weirdness, wackiness the other moment. It's not quite as oscillating between those two things. They're more integrated, I think, in Fallout, and that's really, really pleasant. I think that's what I would be looking forward to most about it. And Fallout 4 in particular, I think the romances, the voice protagonist, I think is really going to be interesting to see how they implement it. That's the first time a Fallout character has had that, and the first time you've been able to sort of have fully fleshed out romances, not to sort of quote a back-of-the-box bullet point, but
it's the building for me that I'm interested in, the sort of building your settlement. And I don't really know a lot about how it works yet, other than that we saw a little bit of a demonstration of the tools, and that's exciting and interesting. I feel a little bit of dread. I feel less dread now that XCOM 2 has been delayed.
oh my goodness.
Thank goodness XCOM 2 is delayed, to be honest. I know it's, I shouldn't be cheering that we don't get to play XCOM 2 soon, but I'm still going to be playing Metal Gear probably by the time Fallout comes out. If XCOM 2 had come out, it was like scheduled for within the same like couple of weeks. Like what would we have done? So
well, we're also going to have StarCraft 2, I believe, on November 11th, and is Call of Duty also releasing on the 11th?
Probably.
I think those three games are all releasing on November 11th.
But so I'm excited for Fallout, but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about how certain games become just sort of your hobby. Like you don't say this is what I'm playing because you're always playing it, and then you're playing other things. But right now, like my hobby games, I feel like need to be kicked aside. And lately my hobby is Rising Thunder and Rocket League, because I have so many like giant open world 100-hour epics, coming up to play, which are fun, but it's like
It's a lot of
game. They're daunting.
When I sit down in front of and think it is time for me now to play Metal Gear, it's like sitting down in front of a 2,000-word book and going, I guess I'm
going to chip away at this.
I guess I'll get through a chapter, and so it is kind of daunting to think, like, because I want to play all these games, obviously, because I assume Fallout 4 will be fun. I hope for it to be. And we also have, like, Game of the Year discussions. So we got to play Metal Gear and we got to play Fallout. And
where is something like Rocket League? How does it square up against a Witcher 3?
I know.
Tyler, it's going to be a hard conversation.
That might be the hardest question I've ever been asked. Witcher 3 or Rocket League? Like,
compare your experience.
Oh, man.
Between this epic fantasy RPG and this game where cars play soccer.
I mean, it's. I don't want to dig in too much right now, but it's a conversation we have to have, right? It's on the one hand, it's ridiculous because it's like, well, The Witcher cost it was quoted recently. It was something close to $100 million, I think.
It was crazy. It was like 80 million, I think.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
And obviously, Rocket League's budget is nowhere near that. So just on paper, you're like, well, look at the amount of assets and work and inspirational storytelling, and
look at all that content,
all that hashtag content, and the gray morality of it, and it's an achievement within its genre. But then you look at something like Rocket League and you say, no one has made a game that is so physical, essential, and pure in its expression of sport, period. Like, what does that mean? Like, you line that up against a completely different other set of values.
Yes.
I don't know.
It can be a losing game trying to compare games.
And Chris touched on that a little bit about not comparing the skill caps of games that are competitive games. Like, you can't ever, in a similar vein, you can compare League and Dota as a game, but you can't compare the, like, skills that go into being great at League with the skills that go into being great at Dota.
Yeah. So back to Fallout 4.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things, one of the cool approaches by Bethesda is, and this is something that Josh Sawyer, when I had a chance to talk to him at PAX, project lead on Fallout New Vegas, was talking about, is Bethesda's clearly seeing how people have modded Fallout games in the past with with the building stuff and just saying, well, let's integrate that and make that a broader feature that presumably you'll still be able to tamper with and add in modded elements. I'm sure you'll be able to add in modded elements in that building system. But just saying, well, people are kind of shoehorning these features in the game anyway, so why don't we take a moment and build them ourselves and add greater systems to them, like you have to defend your base that you build or whatever, which I think is really, really promising. It gets me thinking about what's the next Elder Scrolls game going to look like after just the thousands of mods that we've seen for Skyrim.
I mean, one of the things that I think, one of the reasons I'm excited so much for Fallout 4, at least just to jump in it, is the short time between its announcement and its release. And I hope that means that they've spent a long time working on it to make sure it is ready for that quick release, rather than they set some date and they want to just like get it out and it's going to be buggy, right? That's I'm not saying it's going to be. I'm just saying I hope that a quick release means that they've been working on it for a very, very long time.
Bethesda does this, and its time from announce to release has been shortening, I think. I think Skyrim was announced less than a year, I think, before it released. I remember the trailer, and then I remember there was like a preview thing I went to, and I saw a little bit, and it was out pretty quickly. And this, I think, might be the shortest window between announce and release. They were really reluctant to even show the new Doom last year. They showed it like behind closed doors at QuakeCon. No cameras, didn't release the footage. They didn't release any footage till this year for Doom. So I really appreciate it. I freaking hate, like, the number of times we heard about, saw, previewed, looked at Evolve leading up to its release was just insane. And it's like, if people are like feeling kind of fatigued by a game before it's out, like, that's probably a problem.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We may not have a chance to play, the press may not have a chance to play Fallout 4 before release. That's very unusual. I mean, at PAX, Bethesda had a pretty enormous booth there, but they had a photo, like a statue of one of the Doom demons you could take a photo with, and they had like merchandise there. It would have been the perfect opportunity to showcase Fallout 4, but it wasn't there. I can't talk about what I've played of Fallout 4, but I have played it briefly, and that's all I can say, sadly. But during E3,
they're going to keep shortening the gap between announcement and release till one day you like just look down and realize you've been playing Fallout 5 for 20 minutes already, and you had no idea it was even coming.
Check Steam and how did Half-Life 3 get in there? Yeah. That's unusual.
It's something I appreciate about Valve, though, is that they haven't spent the last however many years slowly leaking out information. Whatever it is they're working on, I have to assume they're just going to say, look what we've got, it's out in 2 months or something.
Oh, man.
This conversation hurts too real, I gotta say.
We have a board game night at our house, as you guys know. Were you there most recently, Tom?
Yes.
So I don't know if you met the guy who used to work at Valve, who was at our board game night.
I didn't, no.
Yeah. But basically, I'm gonna paraphrase and be kind of vague here, but he was talking about how when he was there, it was like, we don't even know. There was no like hard confirmation that Half-Life 3 is even being worked on there.
It's just like like quarantined, if it exists.
It's like, do you know? I don't know.
It's
like,
Area 51
who knows?
of Valve.
It's sort of known but unknown. It was really interesting hearing him talk about that.
So maybe they're not doing it, but
yeah.
It almost kind of lives on as this concept better than it does a game. Like I can't.
I don't
even
want
imagine.
it anymore. I'm done. But I do. I get really fatigued when there's a trickle of information over the course of 2, even 3 years for a game.
No, I totally agree.
So,
and
yeah.
I like what Bethesda has shown us too of Fallout 4. Like, they've shown us a gameplay video that's, it was obviously a little scripted, but it was just gameplay. And they've shown us, like, a trailer that was cinematic and really, like, beautiful to watch to get us in the mood of the world. Like, and then the most recent videos that they've been doing, which are, like, these hilarious little, like, old-timey documentaries about each of the letters of, like, the special, like, your stat letters. Are really, like, interesting. Like, the marketing that they are doing for it, I hate to praise marketing, but, like, they aren't belaboring the point.
Hashtag content marketing.
Yeah. they aren't, like you were saying, they aren't beating us over the head with this game. They're just saying, it's done. We're going to make it and sell it.
I am really bothered by the sort of I guess you could say, traditional games marketing method of like countdown clock to teaser trailer with like a darkened kind of character model, but you don't actually see anything, to like 6 months of silence to second teaser trailer
To retweet this 1,000 times and we'll reveal this piece of concept art.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
To a year later we see gameplay footage, and then a year later anyone kind of plays it.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad how much the growth of social media has. You have to resort to all these petty tricks and just boring garbage to sort of keep the conversation flowing and keep things popping up in people's timelines.
EA for Battlefront did a thing where they had like made an Instagram account for it and released like one like 18th of a picture like every day, and then you had to piece it together. So they make people put together a puzzle that's to keep them thinking about it. And
yeah, but now
just a stormtrooper.
They've also got a mini fridge pre-order bonus.
Oh my god!
So
the mini fridges.
That's the new thing. We have a second mini fridge pre-order bonus game in a year.
I don't want to end the show on that, Tom.
on mini fridges.
Well, we don't worry. That's not the end of the show.
Thank goodness.
We're not going to end on mini fridge pre-orders or Juggernog. And I'm just going to say it to sting you a little bit there, Evan.
It hurts.
Juggernog.
It's like a Han Solo and Carbonite fridge.
Yeah.
The Star Wars one? Yeah.
Someone had a meeting and said, okay, what are the cold things within the Star Wars universe? Give me a list of the coldest, Star Warsiest things.
I want a ceiling fridge.
And someone was like, Hoth.
Yeah.
And the Wampa or whatever.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is I want a ceiling fridge where it's Luke hanging from ice in a cave, and you put your beer, like, up into the ceiling.
Oh, man. I mean...
That's where it's at.
It's not perfect being a Star Trek fan more than a Star Wars fan, as I am. But I thank God every day that I don't have to put up with the merchandise shenanigans of being a Star Wars fan must be. Where, oh man, I don't want to get into the Star Wars ball, the BB-88, BB-8. I don't know.
BB-8.
See, I don't even know.
I might have bought one of those. By the way,
I won't condemn you, but
I'm really excited for it.
It's a nice ball.
A lot of people were excited about the Star Wars ball.
You know what sold me actually, with the little like sound effects it makes? It's adorable.
It is a very cute ball.
We'll have to have it on the show sometime, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Remote control
Guaranteed. So one of the things that you brought up earlier in this conversation about Fallout, though, is this insane amounts of huge, long games that are coming out right now, right? Like, we have Metal Gear, we have Witcher, we have Fallout, there's going to be XCOM, there's going to be this and that and this and that. And it's all these, like, huge experiences, which are not bad by any means. They're great encapsulating experiences. But one of the things that is the opposite end of that spectrum is short games. It's games that you can play and beat in an hour and a half, or, shorter or longer, it depends, which, obviously are not as grand in scale as something like The Witcher or GTA, but it still has just as much of a right to exist and be a game, right? And there was a piece that was written for the site last week interviewing what the creators of these short games thought of the new recent Steam refund policy, which, for those of you who don't know, you can return a game for any reason as long as you, within 14 days of purchasing it, and as long as you haven't played for more than 2 hours.
I thought it was 1 hour.
No, it's 2.
Okay.
It's 2 hours.
I'll trust you.
Yeah. Which, for a game like, say, Stanley Parable, you could conceptually beat that game in 10 minutes, although it's a big quote-unquote beat that game, right? Like, it's not actually, there's tons to do in that game, but even once you've done everything, it could only take you maybe 4 hours total. Yeah. But also, it's an incredible game. Mm-hmm. So, like, I guess, do you think, like, the thing that came up with all these indie developers is that they were all almost entirely in favor of the Steam refunds policy. Mm-hmm. They just thought it needed maybe a little bit more oversight, a little bit more of a human element in determining what game can be refunded at that point. But my question for you guys is Steam refund policy is any reason? And is this game was too short for me a valid reason to returning it? Like if a game in its full experience is an hour and a half, and you beat it in an hour and a half in the day you got it, and then you say, that was dumb, I I wanted a longer game. I'm returning this. And you don't have any ill motives. You're not trying to, like, con the person by playing their game and then not actually paying for it. Like, is this game is too short for me a valid reason for return?
Well, that's strange. I mean, that's saying that you've already completed it, right?
Right, yes. In theory, you've played this game for an hour and a half, you beat it, and you went, what the heck? I feel ripped off, or something along those lines. No ill intent.
I mean, it's positive that consumers have an opportunity to express dissatisfaction, I guess. And I think that's, I'm guessing, part of the reason why even developers of these quote-unquote shorter games or games in general feel like refunds, even if there's some discomfort at first or it's a new system to them that have to get used to, they're at least grateful to be able to say to folks who are critical, who have issues, who have technical issues that they can't figure out, because they're an indie developer of 1 or 5 people who can't take the time to look into every driver issue or whatever, or multi-monitor or whatever nonsense. You just say, well, refund it if you're unhappy. And, only a certain percentage of people will do that, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. That's helpful. But yeah, I mean, what's a better, like, how do you come up with another criteria than that? I mean, where do you draw the line? What's the precedent in other mediums and other retailer formats? Like, I'm not sure. 2 hours seems about as right as any, and I'm sensitive to the fact that there are folks that make games and experiences that are shorter than that from beginning to end, even if they have multiple endings, even if they have, they don't fit that cleanly.
And for the record, just because I see a couple people popping up in chat saying this, like, no, I think everybody, including the indie developers who make these short games, no one's against having an open, like, policy, an open purchase policy. Everyone thinks that was a smart move for Valve to implement. It's just a matter of what do you consider for these people that have maybe been left in a lurch, right?
Refunds are good. I don't know if I can make a sort of ethical judgment for other people as far as whether or not they should return a game they thought was too short. I think for me, if I played a game to its sort of logical completion, however it's designed, and I didn't like the experience or didn't think I got enough out of it, I would, write a Steam review or something. I don't think I would refund it at that point. I'd feel like, okay, I bought into this, I tried the experience, and I didn't like it, but presumably it didn't say, in its bullet points 10 hours long. Games are weird because, you can look at a book and see how many pages are in it, and you can look at the running time of a movie. This is not the same, it's an interactive medium, so it's, you could also play one Rocket League match and say that you've played Rocket League and now you're done, but of course no one would do that.
I heard somebody, was it one of my Steam friends or something that was talking to me that was like, I played Rocket League for 20 minutes or less than 2 hours or something, and they refunded it because they said, I can already tell what this game's going to be. I can see, they sort of saw the extent of it. Okay, I'm going to learn how to do aerial skills, and I can see where that goes, and okay, I understand. I understand what this is going to look like. There's like no surprise ahead of
Yeah.
Well, I saw a Metal Gear Solid 5 review. I think this was actually on Metacritic.
Oh god, the prologue.
Yeah. I saw a Metal Gear Solid 5 review on Metacritic from a user that gave it a 0 out of 10. And this review was incredible because it was he was like, I got an hour in and you then refunded it immediately. You can't even call this a game. It's just an interactive cinematic. I don't know what's going on. And for those of you who don't know, haven't played Metal Gear, the first hour and a half or so is basically just this long kind of intro to the story, and it's like teaching you how to move, and it's very, very on rails and very, very uninteractive and very weird, like super, super weird, especially if you're not a Metal Gear fan.
Yeah, it kind of sucks. And so there's this like danger, right, where it's like you don't always know the first hour of a game or even 2 hours what the game is. I guess that's where, to some extent, we can come in and write reviews that tells people like it's not like the first hour of the game. I can't imagine going into Metal Gear totally blind to what it was, having not seen any of the coverage or trailers. But
there are some people who do that, though.
But on Rocket League, I actually think the refund system maybe is a good way to test a game like that, where it's I think it's absolutely insane to play 20 minutes of Rocket League and be like, I know where this is going, and it's not what I want, because it's like exactly what I want in a game. But in a sense, like sort of multiplayer games where you're going to do this repetitive thing, like maybe Evolve, like maybe after playing a match of Evolve, I could see someone going like, okay, I get a sense of what the progression's going to be like. I'm going to unlock this and that. It was kind of fun, but I don't think this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes perfect sense to me. It's just like there's, like you said before, like what criteria could you put on? You have to have a technical problem with the game,
or if you haven't gotten this arbitrary achievement in the game that signifies ending it, you can refund it.
Yeah, that could be.
That's silly.
Yeah. Like you don't get to see the ending if you plan to refund it.
I mean, there are thousands of games on Steam. You need something that at least partly comfortably fits a one-size-fits-all kind of situation.
I mean, to me, a lot of what could solve this discussion and this problem is more hands-on oversight from Valve, which seems both A, like something that just won't happen because they wanted the system to be automated to a heavy degree, but also B, it seems like an impossible task for them because there are thousands and thousands of games coming out on Steam now. They can't moderate every one of those like successfully with the amount of care that they would need.
I thought they were reviewing refunds to a degree, or at least that's what was said.
They are reviewing refunds to a degree, but I don't think that they're, at least the impression that I got is that they're not saying, oh, this person is playing a short game, therefore.
Yeah, but my understanding is if you are a serial refunder, there's some likelihood that you won't be able to refund at a certain point.
Right.
Something will prevent you from doing that. Yeah, I mean, Valve is, we talked about it. Valve wants to trust in systems, and that's their way of doing things. It's part of their philosophy, I think, proven over time. I mean, you only have to look to the paid mods debacle to see how poor they can be at communication. And actually, with the with refunds, speaking with a publisher, they indicated to me that Valve told no one in advance. And this is something that like other people mentioned to me on Twitter when I mentioned it, that they confirmed this, they corroborated this, that they just rolled out paid mods and God, I keep saying paid mods, refunds, and we're like, okay, here's the system, like good luck, and that's kind of ridiculous because as much as it's a nice thing for consumers and game players, developers have to be able to set themselves up to deal with this, and how do they message it to their community, and giving them no advance warning is kind of insane. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's definitely, like, it's not one of those easy things, right? Like, it's not... It's a huge thing, and I understand Valve's desire to trust in systems because they have such a wild beast to control that I feel like I said, I feel like it's just an incredible task for them to have to try to control that by hand. So I understand where they're coming from with wanting to trust systems, at least.
I've said it before. We need to get away from thinking of Valve as the PC gaming mothership, because they are not a Google. They are not an Apple at all, even close, even 1/10 of their personnel. Valve is a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Doing a controller and helping out in VR and SteamOS and Team Fortress, Dota, Counter-Strike, whatever secret stuff they're working on with Half-Life, Steam. That's a lot. That's a lot
when you start splitting that couple hundred people into teams for each of those things, it becomes small teams.
It's a ton. So you can understand their approach through that, and why they want to remain small independent monolith. Yeah.
A small independent monolith. That's a really good set of descriptors for Valve.
Anyway, I want to talk to our Twitch folks.
Yeah, so we're going to transition into the Twitch chat Q&A portion of the show. If you are watching live right now, let us ask your questions in Twitch chat. You can type PC Gamer, and I will see that it is highlighted a little bit.
And I have the first question for you, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Is a Cacodemon simply a Doom Pokeball?
You really got Pokemon on the mind right now.
I choose you, Tom.
Oh, I'm sure that sounded great when it hit the mic.
That was kind of in your eye. I didn't mean to throw
it was only kind of in
your eye.
I got shot with a Nerf gun in the eye the other day. My eye's been having trouble.
Oh,
but if you're watching at home, or if on either YouTube where we put the show now, or on iTunes, or on the raw MP3 at PCGamer.com, then I'm sorry we cannot have you participate in this portion of the show unless you are a time traveler or watch the show live Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time right here at twitch.tv/PCGamer. So if you come and join us, we will maybe answer your questions there if we see them. And then if you are a subscriber to our Twitch channel, we will definitely be answering your questions as well. Daniel M. Tanos asks in all caps simply Doom, and then follows it up with please. So, are you guys excited for Doom at all? You were talked about Doom a little bit earlier.
I think they've got some novel ideas in there. I'm skeptical about what they're doing with multiplayer, but we can separate that and break that off. That's a whole nother dish. But they've got a gun that charges based on static electricity that you generate by moving. That's really
that's
amazing.
Pretty neat. Yeah.
I want. There's very little of that cool weapon design happening in FPS right now. I mean, after stuff like Bulletstorm, even Gears of War, you kind of throw in there they had a couple interesting ideas. I guess actually, Cliffy B's next game, of course, looks pretty interesting in that regard, with the ability to fire behind your back with seemingly any gun ? But
I saw it done with a rocket, so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm excited about with Doom. Novel, weird ideas, emphasis on movement, even if it's not completely the same kind of roller skatery speed that we remember from Doom 2.
Like the experience of, in an FPS, picking up a gun that you have not encountered before, sort of as you're introduced to it throughout a campaign, and going, what does this one do? And like clicking the alt fire, not knowing what's going to happen, is not an experience you really get anymore, because whatever it is, you're playing Call of Duty and you're like, oh, this has a slightly different sound when I fire it, and spray pattern or whatever, not to diminish the work that goes into designing those weapons, but I just love picking something up and finding out it works differently than I expected, or it's the friggin' flat cannon.
Oh boy, what a classic!
But I'm a little disappointed that like the multiplayer wise, which as you said is a whole nother can of beans. I'm a little skeptical of the like demon, or like the inclusion of like turning into a
so
how does that work?
there's basically a quad damage style power up where you turn into a Renevant, is it, I guess, with the sort of jetpack and rocket launchers on the shoulders. He's sort of the iconic demon
I
in the
don't
game
know.
right now.
I think I just want to play deathmatch.
But another thing that one of our writers, Omri Petit, brought up, big FPS fan, writes in our FPS column sometimes on every Monday. I guess right now in Doom, in multiplayer, you cannot interrupt your own melee animations, I think I remember him saying, which seems really antithetical to the freedom of movement I would want in a game like that, right? I need to be able to sort of pivot. I don't want to be locked into this, this successive series of frames with a lunge or whatever. So
yeah, I guess there's a trade-off there, because they want to make it, a decision to use it versus sort of a non-decision, where you can cancel it.
Like Quake would never do that, for example.
No, probably not.
Anyway,
yeah, it seems cool.
Twitch admin and subscriber Jimmy Weisenhunt asks, Evan, Rogue Spear or Vegas? And I don't even know what that question means. I'm assuming it's a CSGO question.
No, it's a Rainbow Six question.
Oh, okay.
Man, Rogue Spear was really exciting when it came out, I guess.
Oh, these are different Rainbow Six games.
Yeah.
Okay, so I played a lot of Vegas 2.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last Rainbow Six game I've played, I think.
I played more Vegas for sure. Thanks for asking, Jimmy. I had a lot more fun in there. I actually really liked the setting of Vegas. As much as Rainbow Six has this long history of sort of doing, I don't know any other way to describe it other than like cool installations and embassies and bases, and it kind of takes you almost like a spy movie across like these different settings. And Vegas didn't really do that, right? It was, hey, it's in Vegas. But the casinos and putting your back up against a slot machine and hearing the sort of jumbling tones of that in the background, there's something really special about that when a grenade's like flying over your head, and that sort of discordant tone of you're in this luxurious, fancy, playful place, but you're getting shot at. And I love the voice, the VO of the AI in Vegas. It was kind of a shame that game didn't stick around. Obviously, Ubisoft went on to try and make Rainbow Six Patriots, which was canceled. It's actually a game I got to play several years ago, and it did not look very good in multiplayer. It was definitely the right decision. But if you remember, the original Vegas 1 was before Call of Duty 4. Out a full year before Call of Duty 4. And really got in on the ground floor and had a lot of attention around it. A lot of people were playing that multiplayer, even though it wasn't great. It was at least interesting. And because, there was Vegas 2, but they didn't really follow it up and kind of, they weren't able to continue. So Call of Duty and Battlefield just took over their market share completely. Yeah. So, but yeah, Vegas had something special going for it. It remained an interesting competitive game despite being, obviously, it had like a third-person component where whenever you went into cover, you saw yourself, which allows you to cheat around corners and stuff. But it remained fun. So
is that your answer, Vegas?
Yeah.
Between the two?
Yeah.
There you go. JBJ Blaze asks, what do you think of The Last of Us director asking Valve on Twitter for the Half-Life license? Blasphemy, a good idea, or otherwise, even if it was a joke? And I hadn't heard about this. Apparently, the director of Last of Us asked for the Half-Life license on Twitter.
I mean, I'm sure it was a joke, but...
yeah, of course. I mean, honestly, I don't know how I would feel about it. Like, because there's this weird part of me where it'd be like, okay, that's a guarantee that something is happening with the Half-Life license, like more games are coming out. But also, I feel like it's Valve's baby, and it would be Valve's to get the tone right and that sort of thing. Like, I don't think that any other company could get the exact Half-Life tone right besides Valve. I just don't think that's possible.
It is their duty in this world.
Yeah.
But then again, some of the key people behind Half-Life are no longer there. I mean, you look
That's
at
true.
the art director that moved on to Arcane to work on Dishonored. And you can really see the spirit of Half-Life 2 in that game. So
it's like the first thing I noticed is that Dishonored looked, just thematically so much like Half-Life 2's.
And, whatever form Half-Life 3 takes, I think I would really expect some of the response to be, well, this isn't what I remember from 2002 and 2004 or whatever. Like,
there's almost that thing of it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, where it's like if somebody else had the Half-Life license, like they could literally make the best Half-Life game ever made, and it's kind of like people would still compare it and call it not enough and not buy Valve and stuff.
Even Valve will have that problem if they ever make it. I don't want it anymore. I want them to make a new shooter.
I want to make Half-Life Go, the mobile game.
Half-Life Go.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you look at the history of the Source engine and Valve in its various games, you have to assume that whatever next Half-Life game comes out has to be sort of an expression of what the next Source technology, next generation of Source is going to be, and a bunch of innovative ideas about something equivalent to the Gravity Gun, basically. It's not simply going to be a new chapter, a new continuation. It has to sort of represent a new set of ideas and experimentation. And
you have to wonder if that's VR for them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sort of the logical next step between Half-Life 2's improved graphics and physics was like the huge thing. Other than even better graphics and even more physics, I don't know what the huge step forward is other than VR, really.
I have a sense that, Half-Life 3 would probably suffer by being forced into being a VR game. But what better killer app can you think of? What better incentive can you
to buy? Yeah.
What sort of
to sell Vives?
What better carrot can you put in front of people and say, like, if you want to play Half-Life 3, you have to do it with this headset and this new hardware, and trust us, the experience will be worth it.
They would sell 1 billion units.
It would be a really savvy business move. So, who knows?
It would. I feel like they would not be able to make Vives quick enough at that point. Maybe that's me overestimating.
Maybe.
But, Exciting Ty asks, is that dynamite on the shelf behind us real? No, that would be terrifying. And then
it's not real?
It's a candle, though, isn't it?
It is a candle, yes. It's a candle dynamite, which is pretty brilliant. But no, it will not go boom.
It's surprisingly heavy.
Yeah.
It's a solid candle. Wow.
And then to finish up, we've been talking a lot about Valve, but I guess we can do one more Valve title. And we talked about esports earlier, so... 6003 SG asks, what are you guys' thoughts on the potential of TF2's competitive matchmaking? I don't know. I think that Valve has clearly shown that they are not shy from esports with CS:GO and Dota 2, right? Like they run to a certain degree. They rule esports right now. They are the only developer with 2 huge games at the top of esports. And TF2, like you said, has been around long enough and has become like people love that game. If Valve starts pushing into a competitive TF2 scene, which already exists, I'm not belittling the fact that it exists, but if they really start trying to make that another like third pillar of esports for them, it could go places.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. It's going to happen. I mean, Team Fortress 2 will have matchmaking. This is known news. They've talked about it. I mean, some of the big figures in the TF2 competitive community were filling out to Valve several months ago to give feedback. And this is what Valve does. I mean, when they were launching CSGO, they brought in hardcore former players, big map makers in, and say, like, what do you want this game to look like? You know, they rely on that feedback. It's like a proven method for them. That said, TF2 is, you know, being the crazy guinea pig that it has over 8 years, it is a much less pure game than Dota, I think, and certainly from Counter-Strike, in the sense that there are all these weapons and there are 9 classes you can play as, and there's tons of asymmetry and there are all these different modes. There's just a lot more stuff happening. You know, when I think about what, you know, one of the defining qualities of a good esport, a good competitive game, whether or not it's an esport, is, you know, less is more. And you sort of let the player's skill and ideas and decision making do the talking, rather than this grenade launcher is one of 10 different grenade launchers you can choose from. That's not an interesting competitive game to me.
Well, that's true, but also like Dota and League have hundreds of 100+ characters and 100+ items in the store that they could possibly be choosing, and like skills that they could be leveling up in different orders.
Which is why Evan doesn't play them, probably.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
Fair.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, TF2 is like goofy fun time. I think it's fine, you know, whatever happens to it, if it does sort of grow as a competitive. I just don't think it'll ever be Counter-Strike or Dota level of competition.
I agree with that.
Because it's fun time for me. It's like funny source filmmaker videos and me goofing off with the huntsman, you know, which is I'm not exceptionally good at, but I like the idea of having a bow and arrow in a gunfight, and we have fun. We try to win, but I'm never too serious about it.
I mean, it is an entertaining game to watch competitively. I mean, it's usually played about 6-on-6. And the role that scouts have, like watching a talented scout in TF2 is like nothing else, because they have an amazing ability to feint and fake people out. They're incredibly agile, obviously, but also soldiers, like doing air shots, rocket jumping and air shotting is an incredible thing to see. You know, that game played at a high level. You know, even back in like 2009 and 2010, when we like our community, we formed a team. We competed in like Cal leagues and stuff like that, like lower level community leagues. It was a lot of fun. You know, it holds up well as a competitive game. But yeah, how is the whimsy gonna kind of get in there? It's a greater question of is matchmaking really going to be an incentive to bring a substantial amount of people back into Fortress 2? I have a sense probably no, like not the proportion that we've seen with the people flowing into Counter-Strike over the past 2 years, which has been insane.
Well, maybe it'll just give a venue for the people, like Tyler said, the people who want a more competitive scene will go there, and the people who want the whimsy and ridiculousness of TF2 will stay in the other modes, which might be beneficial for the game's health in the long run anyway. But that is all the time we have for today on the PC Gamer Show. We always hate to leave you, but thank you very much for watching. We will be back next week, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, live at twitch.tv/PCGamer, or a few hours after that if you are watching or listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube. But thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you then.
Bye.